Hello Insiders, newsflash time. Let's start with community guidelines update. So there's a broad effort going on to prevent abuse on the platform, something that we've always been doing, but one of the things that we're focusing on now is strengthening the enforcement of our community guidelines policies and making sure that enforcement is also more consistent. So one of the things that creators may not immediately realize is that those community guidelines apply to all of the content that you put on the platform. So it's not just your videos, but it's also your thumbnails, links to other sites, and what we want to make sure is that all of that stuff is consistent with the guidelines. So as an example, for a long time, we've prohibited linking to external sites that have pornography or malware. If we detect an outbound link to a site that has that's not consistent with our guidelines, then that will result in the link being removed, but also results in a community guideline strike. And as you may know, after you receive a certain number of strikes, your channel could be terminated. So you really want to be careful about where you link to from your videos. So next, on that topic, another example is that for a long time we've also rejected custom thumbnails that violate the community guidelines. So what typically happens is if we detect that the thumbnail is not consistent with those guidelines, we will reject that thumbnail. If we see repeat offenses from the same channel, we will then often remove the privilege of being able to use custom thumbnails for some period of time. And then if we see repeated violations beyond that or egregious violations, it could also result in a channel termination. So be really careful about your custom thumbnails, especially like an egregious violation would be if it included pornography in it, but that's the most egregious. There's also like other types of thumbnails that are not approved or characteristics that are not approved, and I'll link below for the specific community guidelines. One other quick point I would make is not only should you be mindful of your thumbnails to make sure that it's consistent with the community guidelines, but it's also a really important thing to help your videos get discovered, because what you want is a thumbnail that will represent the content, but also be appealing to viewers. And not only will we remove the thumbnail if we find the thumbnail is outside the guidelines that we provide for the community guidelines, but if we find that the thumbnail is misleading, it also gets recommended less. So your kind of ideal spot is you've got a thumbnail that's appealing, but it's also accurate and representative of the content, and also for sure, you know, abides by the community guidelines. All right, I digress. So more about the community guidelines. Challenges and pranks. Well, many of us enjoy a good prank video from time to time, but there are types of challenges and prank videos that we won't allow and will remove and issue a strike. And then there are some that we will allow, but we will age restrict who can see it. And we've gotten some feedback from creators, including on Creator Insider, that, hey, can you be a little bit more specific about what you consider harmful and dangerous when it comes to a challenge or a prank? So let me give you some more details that I took some notes from my meeting with the guidelines team. Here's an example of a challenge that would not be allowed on the platform, would be removed and would result in a strike to a channel. If there's a challenge that presents risk of death or features a minor participating and it poses imminent risk of severe injury to that minor, that's just not allowed, period. Will be removed, will be struck. Here's another example of something that is just not allowed at all. If you have a challenge or a prank that involves an unsuspecting victim believing that they are in physical danger, that's not that goes beyond the realm of what's allowed. If the challenge or prank involves real physical harm, results in real physical harm, or involves emotional distress to minors. Okay, so those are just not allowed, period. Now there's other kinds of challenges and pranks that are allowed, but then are age restricted, so they may not be accessible by all YouTube viewers. So what are examples? So if there are adults in a dangerous situation with high risk of injury, that could be age restricted. It may still be allowed, but it might be age restricted. If the primary purpose is educational, scientific, documentary, or art, but it depicts dangerous challenges, that could be age restricted. And in fact, if it's gratuitously graphic, it may not even be allowed. But if it's not gratuitously graphic, and even if its primary purpose is for entertainment, documentary, science, or art, but it depicts dangerous challenges, that could be age restricted. Another one that could be age restricted if it involves a lot of fake blood, gore, gruesome injuries, simulated deaths, where the unsuspecting victim is an adult, that could be age restricted. For some people, they might be thinking, whoa, these are a lot of rules, like maybe you've been on the platform for a long time and you just weren't aware of these restrictions or these guidelines, or you weren't aware that we enforce it the way we have been or will be even more actively. So during this initial period, since we're just announcing it around now, our bias is going to be just to remove videos and not issue a strike, right away. This will give creators a little bit of time to kind of get used to the new enforcement expectations. And if you have a video that was uploaded prior to this announcement, it may still be removed, but we wouldn't issue a strike, because maybe I think we're trying to kind of be as gradual and kind of reasonable as we can, so you don't feel like, hey, I uploaded this thing 2 years ago, it was never a problem, and then all of a sudden I got a strike. But it could still be removed. If your content is rejected or you do receive a strike, you will always get an email alert, and you'll also see it in your channel settings in Studio. So that's another reason why a lot of creators, the email address that they've given us that's associated with the channel, sometimes it's not an email that they check. Maybe they created it like years ago. So you may want to review that and update your email so that you can get these kinds of important notifications. These decisions, if you feel like, hey, my content was removed or I received a strike, but I read the guidelines and I'm absolutely sure that this meets the community guidelines, you can still appeal it and we will re-review it. But what we recommend is, right now is a great time to review all of your videos, all of your thumbnails, all of your links. Make sure they're kind of tip-top, and then you can just avoid any of this affecting you. But hopefully the result of this is that the creators that are producing, original content that viewers really like, that's responsible, that's safe, that's appropriate, will get more opportunities, and we can kind of protect the viewer experience, which in the long run is good for creators too. Okay, so that is all the stuff about the community guidelines. That team has been very busy. Okay, next on to normal kind of newsflash stuff. I think we talked in late last year about an experiment where we were testing a potential new feature where we show more than one thumbnail and then try and optimize which thumbnail is shown based on the likelihood of the viewer to not just click on it but also watch your video. So that started out with a very small number of channels. I think we did it with maybe, I don't know, like 5 or 10. And so now we're expanding that. The results were pretty good. People seem to like it. A lot of the creators that participated, the thumbnails that they thought would perform better didn't. So that's kind of why you want to do this kind of A/B testing. So now we're expanding that pilot to get more channels to participate. It's still a pretty small early stage thing, but hopefully, you know, we're one step closer to validating the idea, the technology behind it, the way the optimization works, and then we can make it available to more and more creators. We're already having some conversations with the Studio Beta team to see how we could integrate it. So, but we need to see how these experiments go. But you know, knock on wood, we'll keep pushing that one along. We also are, remember last year we talked about this self-certification idea where rather than relying entirely on the automated classifiers to determine if a video is appropriate for advertising or not, we wanted to experiment with the idea of creators rating their videos and basically filling out a pretty detailed report at the time of upload, you know, about what language is involved, if there's you know, guns in the video, if there's any nudity or things that advertisers care deeply about, to determine if they think their ads they would like their ad campaign to run against that content. And so that experiment has been going pretty well. And so it's also expanding, and we're getting more creators involved. And you know, like all these experiments, we just like to start small and see how it works. But that's moving along. So I just wanted to let you guys know, because I know a lot of people ask, hey, what's going on with that idea? The idea seems to have merit, and we are continuing to push on. The one thing I will say though is that it's not like, oh, you do this and you automatically get ads. It's more like we want a more accurate read on the video, and also it requires a little bit of a track record from the creator. So if we find that a creator is always saying, oh yeah, there's none of this in any of the video, and then we find it, that's really bad for the platform. It's bad for the creator, because then we have to potentially, you know, remove that privilege. It's also bad for the, you know, advertiser if we don't catch it. So there's a, you know, I think it's a really cool program and option, but it also requires the creator to really be as accurate as possible with their ratings. But we'll keep you posted as that experiment moves on. Next, there is some new features in the Studio Beta. Is that number still counting? Good. New features in the Studio Beta. You can now upload and download subtitles and closed captions files directly from the Studio Beta. You can also choose the mid-roll ad placement from the Studio Beta editor, and you can choose ad formats directly from the Studio Beta. So these are some top complaints about the Studio Beta. We heard you, have prioritized it, so those are now launched. And then just as a sneak peek, there's some new stuff coming to the Studio Beta probably in the next few months. We're going to add this really cool strikes card in the dashboard. So if you get a strike, you can very quickly see it in the Studio Beta dashboard and take action right away. Like if it's a copyright strike, you can try to address it. If it's a community guideline strike, you can review it and either address it or appeal it, or just know, okay, you know, you got that strike. And that will just increase transparency. We're also working on supporting info cards in the Studio Beta editor, so you can just add them directly from the Studio Beta editor. We're making some improvements to the Ideas for You widget on the Studio Beta dashboard, making it a little bit more targeted, making the recommendations a little bit more personalized. Adding support for Super Chat in the Studio Beta, and what does that say? Ooh, memberships. So card ran out of storage, so I had to delete some old news flashes. Hopefully I have them either already published or on the laptop. Otherwise, that would be a bummer. At any rate, The other thing that we're working on is support for memberships in the Studio Beta. So a lot of stuff launched in the Studio Beta recently, and a lot of stuff coming very soon. And as part of that, we will also start auto-upgrading more creators to the Studio Beta, which all it means is that your default studio will be the Studio Beta as part of this kind of broader rollout of the product. You can always go back to Classic. There'll be a little link in the bottom left, but we strongly encourage you to get used to the Studio Beta, to give us feedback, because A, we've made a lot of improvements over the last several months. B, it will be the studio for all creators. So you probably have noticed we haven't made any improvements to Classic. It's just kind of been frozen. There's a lot of new features that are only available in the Studio Beta. All new features going forward are not going to be built on Classic. So we really want creators to have this time now to get used to the Studio Beta, to learn the new navigation. In fact, I just shot a video a week or two ago answering some top questions about the Studio Beta, so hopefully we can add that to this channel soon. But it's really good to kind of get used to it and learn and figure it out. We manage Creator Insider completely from the Studio Beta. I have a couple of personal channels that only use the Studio Beta, so hopefully you can as well. And if there's anything that you find that's not in the Studio Beta, which is becoming more and more rare, you can still go back to Classic if you're kind of really in a pinch. All right, so lastly, just want to give a shout out to Felix Beuster. He's been super active in our comments and been answering questions from other members of the Insider Nation. So thank you, Felix, for everything you do to help creators know more about how YouTube works. We really appreciate you volunteering and taking the time to do that. Okay, I think that's all for this week, so have a great week and keep it real. All right, if you are still here, you are ready for the movie quote. So last week's news flash was from the movie Aliens, and the first person to guess it was, let me look it up, Filmmaker's Formula. Oh, quite appropriate. I checked out the channel. It's actually pretty cool. He shows you how to do all these kind of video editing tricks and things. So check it out. He's at 911 subs. Maybe the nation can get him to 1,000. Speaking of which, my one of the guys on the team for Creator Insider has an idea where if you wanted to recommend either a video or a cool channel for us to give a shout out to, maybe we could promote it on this channel each week. So put it in the comments. We'll take a look at suggestions and maybe highlight one. We'll try that at least for next news flash and see how it goes. So I'm just gonna give you the quote. All right, I'll call the $2,000. I'll gamble, but don't splash the pot. You're on the draw, Mike. Go away. This one's not good for you. And in my club, I will splash the pot whenever the blank I please. And then he splashes it. All right, so if you know that movie from the late 90s and I won't say anything else about it, put it in the comments below and keep it real. We'll see you next time.